And welcome back to another episode of Tidal Flooding Talk. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. We have Palma Shiles here as well. Our co-host, Dan Skelding, cannot be with us today. He is with his daughter at a dance class. We figured for this episode, we'll give Dan a break. And, it's okay because we have a recurring guest. And a recent recurring guest, Kiley Price from Inside Climate News. She's going to be here to talk to us about ghost boats. Very fitting for Halloween weekend ish. I mean, it is election day. Some people might think that's scary too, right, Palma? No,
Yeah, depends who you ask, but I still think, we're within the Halloween time frame. It's still spooky season, so
right.
the episode still fits even if we're just a few days after Halloween.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too. Let me ask you this. Where are you on the candy corn versus pumpkin candies? You like those little pumpkin candy corns better than the traditional candy corns?
I'm not big on candy corn, period. Like, if
Okay.
I'm going to eat it, it would be traditional candy.
Okay.
The
All
pumpkin
right.
is too much.
So what's Palma having on Halloween?
I'm more of like, chocolate and some gummy candies too, gummy bears. The
Okay.
sour worms are good too, but yeah, I'm more of a chocolate person.
Okay. And I think this is a perfect segue for Kiley. So we're just going to bring her in here. So where are we at on the Halloween? What's Kiley having for Halloween?
I love Nerds gummy clusters. I don't know if you've tried.
Oh, that's an unusual one.
Yeah, they are so good. I mean, hopefully houses aren't just handing out handfuls of clusters, but
Okay. All right. Well, you know what? You're in New York City, Kylie. So, trick or treating. I mean, I don't even know what's trick or treating like in New York City.
it depends where you are. I can't
Depends where you
imagine in this building there will be much going up and
are.
down the stairs, knocking on doors.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if they do, I'll probably just hide because I don't here.
Yeah, I mean, in the world of cameras and all that, and the ring doorbells and stuff, it's different than it was back in the day. All right, so we'll actually get into real ghost stuff here, ghost boats. So you're with Inside Climate News. We did have you a few weeks ago to talk, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate you being here today. So you wrote an article back in August, and the headline here is "Supercharged Hurricanes Mean More Quote Ghost Boats." Haunting waterways. So just, and we'll ask a whole bunch of different questions, but what are ghost boats? What are you referring to when you say that?
Yeah, so it doesn't mean like a haunted ship. Ghost boats are a term used to describe abandoned or what they call derelict boats. And so these are essentially, they are haunting in a way to certain waterways because they can, when they're abandoned, they can linger for a long time.
Got it. Okay. So this is something like, and you know what, to be honest with you, I remember one time I was in Louisiana and we did like one of those boat tours, like around the bayou. And I remember seeing like two boats that were just like abandoned, like on the side of the little channel or waterway that we were in. I'm like, I just feel like I don't see this in New Jersey, and I'm guessing, to your point, hurricanes, that's when you see this in New Jersey. We had Superstorm Sandy in 2012, our last landfalling hurricane, by the way, 1903, where, it's been 123 years. But your article mentions thousands of boats, from Louisiana all the way up, to New Jersey. How do you see the rise of these ghost boats, exaggerate or exaggerating some of the tidal flooding and navigation hazards? I guess you could talk nationwide. If you could talk about New Jersey a little bit, that'd be great too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's like an unknown number of these boats because tracking and monitoring is really difficult, and they're just starting to invest more at a federal level to create like a database to track all of these boats. But we do know that there are thousands all over the country, including in New Jersey. You might just not be seeing them as much. I would say anywhere though that there are boats, which New Jersey has many of them,
Right.
there's probably going to be this problem, partially because in certain circumstances, these can be really expensive to remove from the water. So it doesn't just have to be hurricanes that is the reason for this. Some boat owners actually will just kind of let their boat loose or abandon it in a certain area. And then another reason that you might not be seeing it, which is on the flooding end of things, is that if there's enough flooding and the sea levels rise enough, the boats can end up in like a mangrove forest or land-based. So that's what's happened a couple times in Florida too, with these boats. So yeah, it's a pretty widespread problem, and in New York as well.
I've seen people a lot on Facebook kind of complaining about these ghost boats when they do appear, and more that they're an eyesore. But it sounds like from reading your article, there may be more of an environmental impact as well. Could you describe that for us?
Yes, yes. So along with being a bit of an eyesore, not only can this pose navigational risks, so sometimes it might just be part of the boat that's coming out of the water or none of the boat. So boaters who might be watching, you know that it can be difficult to maneuver around, especially in a more narrow waterway. But from an environmental standpoint, if these boats are in the water and any kind of damage, they can start leaking oil, they can start leaking fuel. So that's a big pollution problem. They can also occasionally chip off, and not only microplastics, but big pieces of the boat can come off, and that's really disruptive. And then another really interesting thing I thought with this situation is that fish like to congregate around things. Um, so hence coral reefs. This also happens with oil tankers even, where fish just start coming when you put something in the water. So if a boat is in the water long enough, it might actually become part of the ecosystem in a way. So this is a gentle issue too for different places. If the boat is now a fixture in a place, then even removing it can be a problem.
So, you say in your article, it averages more than just over $24,000, to remove a single boat. And many states lack a protocol for dealing, with this. Are there states, what are some states that do actually have protocols for this? And what are the protocols in those states?
Yeah, so this is a really big problem in Florida, for example. So they call Florida the boating capital of the country.
Yeah.
And it's just recently that there's been more legislation and funding around this. I would say that the majority of states do have some sort of protocol. Even New Jersey has, a law surrounding this, but the issue in New Jersey is that there's not a policy surrounding the funding for that law. So there is a legislation. I did some digging, and there is a legislation that was proposed last year in Jersey to ramp up some of that funding to be able to take these boats out of the water, and even find them, create like a database for them. But what you have to do is pretty labor intensive. So I wanted to point out one situation in Florida, which I was just baffled by. But for decades off the Keys, there was this 100-foot submarine that was put in the water by just an average person, and they had big dreams for the submarine. And
How many people on a submarine?
I know,
How
right?
many personal submarines are there in this country?
Right? I don't know. Maybe we would be surprised. But in this situation, those dreams did not play out. The boat was just sitting, or the submarine was just sitting in the water and wreaking all sorts of havoc in the area. And eventually, there was an initiative that cost $195,000 to remove
Ooh.
this submarine. And a lot of that is coming from government funding. And so this person was fined for this, but only fined $1,200 as reported,
Mm.
and
Mm.
got probation. So $1,200 fine versus the astronomical amount of money it took to get this out of the water. I think that that poses one of the really difficult issues with this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that, why don't you have the other end, pick up the tab for all of it? I mean, they're the one who left their dreams in the water, quite literally. But go ahead, Palma. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump in.
No, I mean, I can't believe that it costs so much money to remove these boats. It's wild. But I think most people are also not aware of that. A lot of people that do complain and want answers. Maybe they don't realize what it would take to actually get these out of the water. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think every boat owner that I know goes into it thinking that it's not going to cost as much to have a boat as it does,
Yeah.
and to maintain it. And so that can be another difficulty, is kind of this lack of awareness, and also lack of areas to drop off a vessel once it's reached its end of life. So I know in New York that there's a program that they're working on right now to try and have a place where these boats can go. So I think that that's kind of a promising initiative. If you can get boat owners to at least know, okay, we have an option for you if it's time to get rid of your boat. Cars are kind of similar, but it's a little bit easier because you don't need to navigate them through waterways.
Right, right. And there's no real like boat junkyard, out there. Unlike, cars have junkyards. You have to tow, right? You have to get the tow, and
Yeah.
you kind of talk about this. We have to get the tow. You have to bring it to the right place. You might have to transport it on land, so you're not transporting on sea and land. It's all an extra cost. All right, we're going to take a brief break, and on the other side, we'll be back with Kiley Price here on Tidal Flooding Talk. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
welcome back. You are watching Tidal Flooding Talk, and we are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, who would like to remind our viewers to protect natural floodplains. Floodplains, like salt marshes and stream beds, are nature's way of managing floodwaters while improving the environment. Help them do their job. Reduce boat speeds to minimize erosion, use fertilizers sparingly to protect water quality, and limit hard surfaces in your yard so rainwater can absorb naturally. A little effort goes a long way in protecting your community.
Awesome. And we are back with Kiley Price talking about ghost boats. You said during the break you had some numbers from Sandy in 2012 about this. I'm curious, where did we end up?
Yeah, I realized I haven't talked much about the hurricane aspect of things yet. And that is what my article was about in the first place.
Right, right.
So yeah, this problem is even worse when there's a storm. So for boat owners, it might not be top of mind also when a storm is barreling towards your home, to be able to secure your boat. And there also might not be options to do so. So that is what happens in cases like Katrina. And then for Sandy, I looked at some of the numbers and I found that more than 65,000 leisure boats nationwide were damaged or lost in the storm.
Wow.
And a lot of those were in New Jersey, and that totaled to be $650 million in damage. So yeah, that's the potential for a lot of these boats to kind of be introduced into waterways and have these ghost boat situations. So it's not just folks who are abandoning boats on purpose. It's also people who might have boats that were beloved in their life, but they might not even be able to find them.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
would
I
you
guess.
say, sorry, Joe.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
So if there is a hurricane coming or a big storm, would you say that boat owners should just do whatever they can to get their boat out of the water or secure it?
Mhm.
How can people avoid having these ghost boat scenarios?
Yeah, I talked to somebody from the Boat US Foundation and I asked the same question. And in a lot of cases, if you are able to pull your boat out of the water, that's a little bit better just because as the tide rises, if you can, it's kind of like having a house on stilts. It's not foolproof, but it does make things a little bit better. And it's especially better if you're actually able to take it out and have it in a boat yard. So I know some people who have done that in the past, but it's with these smaller boats that they're able to do so. But even just fortifying the boat and on your dock, I've heard promising things too about floating docks. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough issue. In any case, it's probably going to be pretty expensive.
Got it. And you kind of touched on this, the ghost boats leaking oil and fuels, and sometimes into the sensitive, coastal habitats that we have. Have we seen, or in your research, something interacting with tidal flooding events to kind of exaggerate this impact as well? Especially I'm thinking like the whales. I mean, we hear about a lot about whales in New Jersey, and there number of whales that have passed away or have been euthanized. Anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, anytime there's flooding, so it's not just hurricanes, but anytime tides can rise. And even I was just looking right before this call, because Boat US Foundation is working on this project with NOAA to better document this ghost boat issue across the country. And there are a lot of places that are not by the coast that have this issue too. So you can imagine it's like a compounding problem by the coast where you have water coming from flooding from on land and then flooding from the ocean. So yeah, that can be a big issue. And then if we want to talk about whales, this could disrupt whale habitat in some cases, but I think the bigger issue is actually the moving boats that are not
Yeah.
abandoned.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk about that too.
Yeah, I know you wrote in the article, it's been covered often in Inside Climate news. And this isn't a whales episode, but we'll ask, what have we seen in New Jersey with whale deaths in terms of the source of these unfortunate industries or worse that happen?
Yeah, and for the ghost boat situation, it's not just the boat going into the water, it's also everything that was in the boat. So part of the reason I referenced that in the piece is because another thing that can come out of your boat for the fishermen out there is gear. And that's another term that people introduce, another kind of Halloween-esque term, but ghost gear.
Yeah.
That is a huge issue across the country, across the world. And a lot of the times, this gear comes together into one big knot, too. And whales can get wrapped up in that gear. You wouldn't think that would kill them, but oftentimes it can. And even just having that laceration or carrying around this gear can cause sickness, infection. And then, with regards to the moving boats, this is something that I've covered a lot on the East Coast, especially in New England, but it's a problem in Jersey as well because there are cargo vessels moving across the water, big, big boats. It can even happen with recreational boats, but this issue of vessel collisions. Um, Obviously, whales spend most of their time underwater. You might not see them unless they pop out of the water, take
All
a
right. That makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
there are some whales that do that more often. So humpback whales do that more often than, for example, endangered North Atlantic right whales. And so, yeah, the big issue there is that these boats are going so quickly and they might not realize it even, but they might hit a whale. And so there have been documented cases in New Jersey, in New York waters, in Massachusetts, especially, and in Maine where the whales are hit by these boats and have these propeller marks. And so that kind of goes back to what we were talking about prior to this. There are situations where they might be able to heal over time, but also situations where there's euthanasia.
Now,
Got
is
it.
there something that could be changed to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, so I have talked to so many researchers and policymakers on this issue. And a big thing is just slowing down. So they call them whale school zones, and it's similar to school zones that we do when we drive. It's just slower for the habitat and the migration corridors that these whales use. It doesn't mean you have to go slow across every water. It's pretty well documented where these whales go, although climate change is changing that in some circumstances. Um,
Mhm.
but all along the East Coast, there are these voluntary slowdown zones, and then there are some that are mandatory. But it goes back to that issue of how much enforcement is there going to be on the water. There are some labs that are looking at speeds from satellites and are tracking this on their own. So, kind of watchdog scientific labs that are tracking this. But yeah, I mean, with these big shipping vessels, imagine if you were a whale in the water and it's barreling at you, it'd be kind of tough to dodge.
So you're saying it's well documented where these whale school zones are. So if you're a boat captain, then you definitely would know where you should be slowing down.
Yeah, you're most likely getting an issue during certain parts of the season. So that's the other thing. It's like a whale might not always be present in Jersey, but it is present during times in its migration or if there's a lot of food in the area. And these voluntary, more dynamic zones will occasionally happen, where NOAA will alert. So the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and that's a federal agency, they'll alert boat captains that there might be a slowdown in place because there's a whale in the area that's been seen. And sometimes even boat captains will be the ones to report that whale being in the area. So yeah, don't want to like villainize the industry. I think there is some effort to support uptake on this. But the big argument for certain whales like the North Atlantic right whale is there's not very many left. So anytime one gets hit and does not survive, that's a big blow to the entire population.
Got it. All right. Well, we're going to take one final break. We'll come back on the other side here with Tidal Flooding Talk. And we're back with our final segment of this episode of Tidal Flooding Talk. So, Kiley, I'm thinking with the ghost boats, right? Like, what is the talk about just letting these boats sink down and become like part of the ecosystem? You kind of mentioned that, but isn't it? I don't know. I would think maybe it's more ecological and or economically friendly to have them become like an artificial reef or something like that, and maybe remove the oil and the harmful parts and let it sink and become part of a reef. Where are we on that?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I know that there's an initiative. I forget right now where it is for this giant ship to do that goal. But before doing that, it is like you have to remove everything. You have to clean everything. Like some of these coral and the fish are also susceptible to whatever little contaminants we can have down there. And I just don't see that being a realistic possibility for a lot of these boats, especially when I mentioned like they might have little cracks that come off and even microplastic. So
Okay.
that can be a big problem for coral too. So yeah, there are so many, and I think it's a more rare situation.
Yeah.
That you're going to have one that can fit nicely in the ecosystem. And this is like a problem that expands across all pollution. I did a story one time on ocean cleanup efforts. So, like out by the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, where there is so much garbage, they're trying to clean it all up and corral it into big nets. And the issue with that is that there's wildlife in the garbage patch now. So
Right.
it's
Okay.
kind of this catch-22 that we've put ourselves in where you are cleaning these things up, but then at the same time you're removing fish and if you're not careful, maybe even sea turtles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, who really is responsible for these ghost boats? I mean, who can people report them to and what
Yeah.
happens from there? I mean, I hear that it's very costly to remove them, but what's the first step?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is the boat owner's responsibility. Like when they are ready to get rid of their boat, it is your civil duty to get rid of that boat in a sustainable way. And like we were saying, when it's a government project to remove these boats, like that money is coming from somewhere, and that money is oftentimes coming from our taxes. So that's one thing. But there are places that you can report it if you see the boat. So I was just looking at the NOAA database and where you can report it in New Jersey. So let me just double check that here. So I give you the right information.
Wow, we're
So
getting live journalism right
yeah,
now.
right. I'm glad I have a million links up on my screen. Happen to find the right one. But if you do see a ghost boat somewhere, you can report it to the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission, actually. Um,
Oh,
Yeah, so and it's important, the sooner that you can report it, the better. Um, there might be a situation where people can get their boats back if it's quick enough. But there's also situations where these boat owners can be held accountable. If you've seen it in your area for a long time, which is what happens in Florida. Like that's how I started my story, is that there was a boat in a mangrove forest that was there for like tw since 2022, and it just got removed in July. So yeah, it can be a long-term problem, but it's helpful when they know where these boats are.
Okay. And then just kind of looking forward, into the future, is there anything on the horizon, maybe in a legal aspect that, gives us some optimism for less of these ghost boats to be around, or at least for them to be taken care of quicker? Are there any, potential case studies coming up?
Mhm. Exorcisms. No, I'm kidding.
Exorcist. Look at that. Good for the Halloween episode, like that.
No, no. The way to exercise these from the water is step one, knowing where they are. That's obviously the biggest thing. So this project with Boat US, they're working with NOAA, and part of it is to create this database and try to spot in different areas where these boats are. So they're just getting started. I looked at it before this call, and they've got a few on the list so far, but NOAA's also tracking them on their own. And then having these distribution centers where you can drop off boats if it's time for end of life for them. I think that that's really promising, like in places like New York, because there just needs to be options that can be affordable. And then just, yeah, keep an eye out on your end. If you want it to go away, sometimes you have to be the squeaky wheel who's reporting it and making
Right.
sure that there's awareness around it. In some areas, like that Florida situation I was talking about, there were people who were like almost a little sad to see it go because it was a remnant and a reminder in a lot of
Mm.
ways of a traumatic situation. But at the end of the day, it's not the best for the ecosystem. So I think, yeah, moving forward, everybody can help, but these monitoring programs, they're popping up in different places, and so is legislation. So in Jersey, that one legislation is moving forward for the funding end of things. But yeah, I think it's promising to see that more people are aware of this, and even that we're talking about it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Kiley, thanks again for all this information. We appreciate it. Let us know again where people can find more from Inside Climate News, and you as well.
Yeah, so you can find our work at insideclimatenews.org. I write our weekly newsletter, which is called Today's Climate. If you're curious about things like this, this was one of the pieces that I wrote for it. And I also write a lot about whales. So
Yeah.
yeah, happy to share more whale
The
facts.
whale guru.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Awesome. Okay, great, great, great. Well, we're going to end, as we do every episode, with the one thing we can't stop talking about: tidal flooding or otherwise. I'll start with this one. Since it is our we'll say Halloween-ish episode, I want to talk about trunk or treating, because I'm actually a big fan of trunk or treating. I wish they had that when I was a kid, because as someone who was, nervous to go up and ring the doorbell and knock on the door, like I almost like didn't want to like knock on the door half the time. And then my parents would be like, "Oh, do it, do it." And then I'm like, "Oh," like I just dreaded it. Right. And I love to go in a group of kids, so I didn't have to be the one ringing the bell. Anyway, this like takes that all out. You still get to interact with people, right? It's not like you're just picking up candy off of someone's front porch. In fact, you're probably interacting with them more, and it's in a contained spot. So you don't have to keep walking around trying to find the house. Especially like you said, Kyle, you said you might hide, if someone's knocking on your door. This is all, it's all in a communal place. It's a great family event. So I am pro trunk or treating. I wish they had that when I was a kid, but I will, maybe I'll live vicariously through my kids one day. So that's where I'm at for my one thing. Palma, you want to go next?
I don't know if I agree with you 100%.
Oh,
But like the adventure of like walking around the neighborhood for Halloween. But that being said, I think from this point forward, I'm like 100% thinking about Christmas. So
so are you but you like Halloween, right?
I do
Okay.
like Halloween, but once Halloween is over, I'm like,
Okay. How do you feel about Thanksgiving?
I love Christmas. I mean, I love Thanksgiving. See, I love
See, I don't know if you love
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving
I
based on that
do
answer.
like I love it, but it's not something that I'm like excited for weeks in advance. Like
Okay.
that week, I'm like, ooh, Thanksgiving's coming up. But like,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
all.
All right. Kylie, we'll let you be the judge on this one.
Oh, of what, our take
What?
on the
No,
Trump.
the trunk or treat. Well, you can talk about whatever you'd like, but where are you on trunk or
Yeah,
treat?
no, I love like the trunk or treat events. We used to
Yeah.
do one at the college that I went to for undergrad, and
Okay.
it was so the community could all come. And yeah, I thought it was a really fun thing. But I see where you're coming from, Palma. I grew up in a cul-de-sac, and there was one house that was so good at Halloween, and it was like
Oh.
such a treat to go into a different neighborhood and be like knock on the door. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I could see both sides. I know that's probably an annoying answer.
No,
Mm.
there's pros and cons to both for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Um, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how to take advantage of daylight. It's so dark out right now and it's like 6:15.
Right.
And it's so much of my day is spent in front of a computer. So finding new walking routes, doing the occasional work at a coffee shop. I finally found one that has an outdoor space
Okay.
that is bigger than one like
Right.
sidewalks little
Right.
cube. So yeah, I think just like finding ways to get out in the sun and take advantage of it when you can.
Well, this is a November 4th episode, so daylight savings time. We're going to pretend daylight savings time happened while we record this. So now the sun's setting at 5 o'clock. It's crazy out there. It's crazy out there.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
I'm gonna lose any and all tan, which as you can see is not much.
Mm,
It's gonna be gone.
yeah. My tan, it's like it's quickly fading. That's right. I had a beach day on October 5th. That was a full
Wow.
beach day. It was good. Nice. It was Sunday. I was out there for hours. And that was like my last like real tan.
That's a late season one, so you should be lucky.
Yeah, we'll take it. Now I got to go to Florida for that.
Rio.
I'll look for the ghost boats, Mom.
Boat capital of the US.
That's right, boat capital US. All right. Well, for Kylie Price and Palma Shiles, I'm Joe Martucci. Thanks for watching this episode of Tidal Flooding Talk. We have new episodes every Tuesday at 7 p.m. and we have episodes scheduled already until early February. So we are rocking and rolling here. We'll be back with you next Tuesday with more. Thank you again to Kylie, and we'll talk with you all soon.